All right, so this idea of absolute, usually philosophers talk about contingent and necessary being, right? So God is a necessary being, right? He's the first, he's the ultimate, he's the foundation, and then everything else is dependent on God. So everything else is contingent, right? That's the idea here.
So God isn't a contingent being. There's nothing that he depends on in order to exist.
Exactly. Yeah. And God doesn't exist because, for instance, something else brought him into the world, right? He isn't.
But where did God come from? Who made God?
Yeah. Well, he always was, right? He's necessary, right? He isn't powerful because something else made him powerful. He isn't wise because something else made him wise. He isn't good, our author tells us, because something else made him good. God alone is the ultimate source of all existence, right? He's the ultimate source of all power and wisdom and goodness. And so that means that God is the final standard of all existence and power and wisdom and goodness, right? He's the standard. You talk about setting the bar. He is the bar.
Right.
And so that's what we mean when we say that God is absolute, right? He is ultimate. He's the standard for all of these things.
Right. And just remember that all worldviews have to answer these types of questions in order to be a complete worldview, or they just shirk it off as, I don't know.
Yeah. So what is ultimate reality? So if you're materialist, well, it's the physical world, the physical universe. Yeah. That's ultimate reality, right?
So I have a mind? Well, no, it's just a bunch of chemicals that fizz or pop or have different levels, and you experience them, and you can change them with drugs. That might be true, but is that the ultimate? And so materialists would say yes in that regard.
The ultimate reality is Brahman or Nirvana or whatever, right? And so for Christianity, the ultimate reality is God, right? He's the absolute, right? He's the ultimate. He's the source of all things,
right? Important person that God is. So not only is he absolute then, but he is also personal, and the Bible always uses personal pronouns to refer to him.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Not only is he absolute, that is, we might say above or beyond everything, right? But he's also personal, right? Yeah. He's intimately related to everything, which is really, really interesting. Right? Yeah.
So this isn't like the kind of deism that we hear with, all the founding fathers were Christians. No, they were all deists. It's the guy who winds the watch up and sets it in the forest and then walks away. Yeah. So that's not who God has revealed himself in the Bible is. There might be people that ascribe to a God type figure from that, but then they have to talk about how they came to know that God, and if he's unknowable, how do we know what we know then? But here in the Christian worldview, he's personal. He's able to be known. He reveals himself as a father, as a he, and as a husband, depending on what verses you read. He's a father to the child of Adam, to Israel, to the church, all those things. So he is personal. God has personal characteristics, like he thinks, he plans, he chooses, he speaks, and he loves. And so, he's a jealous God. I am a jealous God. You shall not have any other gods before me.
Well, not that they're right.
That's a negative quality. You can't have that negative quality. But if God's the ultimate, then wouldn't he want his people to recognize who he is? And so by going off and ascribing his characteristics to fake idols, then he should be that jealous, just as I would not want my wife smooching other guys because I am a jealous husband.
Yeah. And he's a jealous God, and no other gods before me. That doesn't mean that there are other gods that could be before him.
Right.
It means that we shouldn't attempt to place things as the ultimate that really aren't.
Right.
Like ourselves. I'm the ultimate.
Right. And even in that, God is revealing aspects of nature and him that he's saying, like, well, I want you to believe true things, which is a very important point because there are some gods, small g's, in other religions that have nefarious ideas of what you should believe. And so if you believe it, they've won because they've tricked you, because that's their job, be tricky gods. So here, again, some religions teach that God is absolute but not personal. According to those religions, God is not the kind of being with whom we could have a personal relationship. He's so far above us that it's like us communicating with ants.
They call that transcendence, right?
Yeah.
God transcends his creation.
Right. So he's transcendent even above his own transcendence. So he's able to, if he does reveal his word to us, then he can't be tied down to his word. And so he could change it so that salvation comes with eating the most hot dogs. If you eat 81 hot dogs in your life, paradise,
you're in.
Yep. If not, you burn in your shoes for all eternity, something like that.
Well, you don't get any more hot dogs.
Maybe one person's hell and one person's heaven. Yeah. But here the Bible is clear, because that's our standard. That's our revelational source of how do we know who God is. The Bible is clear that God is both absolute and personal. And like us, God is personal, but unlike us, God is absolute. And so we call these kind of different characteristics. So there are ones that we share, the communicable attributes, and then there are the ones that we don't share.
Like personal is communicable, right? We share that with God.
Yeah,
right?
Thinking, feeling, loving, those qualities made in the image of God. We'll get to in a little bit. But unlike God, we're not everywhere. We're not all powerful. We can't tear the fabric of nature in order to enter into it, to do something that goes against the natural order, because we are in and part of the natural order as well.
So another way to summarize the biblical view of God is to say that God is a perfect being, right? And which means that he manifests every perfection. So every good characteristic a good being could possess, God possesses to the maximum degree possible, right? So that's what we mean here. So God is perfect in his goodness. That is, there's no evil in him. God is perfect in his knowledge and wisdom. And so there's no, we might say ignorance, right, in him. And he never makes a mistake, right? And God is perfect in his power. Nothing is beyond his control. He can accomplish whatever he wills, right? So that's what we mean by powerful. You get whatever you want, right? You can accomplish whatever you will. But whatever God wills, of course, must be perfectly good, because he's perfectly good. And it must be perfectly wise, right? Because he's perfectly wise. So nothing can defeat God's plan.
Right? And so all these areas we can have discussions on and dig down further. What we have to realize in this chapter is ultimately that Dr. Anderson is providing us what the Christian worldview is. And so, yes, it's always you can always expand upon these qualities and discussions and talk about, well, how is this like this, or why is this included? Why is this a must? So we're not providing kind of an apologetic for each characteristic here. What we are is presenting what the Bible says about the Christian worldview.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing that we probably should
for those
mention,
who may be wanting in the fight.
That's right.
Yeah.
The other thing we should mention is he also in each of these things that he's talking about, whether the existence of God and all that kind of stuff, his power, his goodness, he kind of gives shows in the Bible where those things are, so that he kind of gives proof that this is what the Bible says. Right.
Kind of. This isn't just being made up. It's some guys in a cave in year 6 form these up, and we're repeating the mantra. No, this is he offers scriptural support, and so that's ultimately what we're doing. So we're not referring to in Genesis 1:2 he also says this, et cetera, et cetera.